Now, given my data cap issues, I obviously cannot upload long 1080 pixel Let's Plays, so I need to think of a long-term solution for that. However, this affords me the opportunity to go back to talking over stills, which many of you are used to, of course, and various aspects of game discussion. Now, something was occurring to me as I was playing Dragon Age the other day, and that is the difference between the Mass Effect universe as we have come to know it and the Dragon Age universe. This is not Inquisition specific, but more sort of a general sense. And thinking back on Mass Effect, no matter how flawed the series was, and particularly the Mass Effect 3, which was just, as we know, an utter disaster, and not just the ending, it had a what I can only call a personalization effect, a personal effect that is by and large lacking in Dragon Age. And I think this is in part, of course, due to the different goals that the writers have. It's true that Shepard was trying to save the galaxy, but his crew, for the most part, some of them, didn't feel like hired help. They didn't feel like this is a job. This adds, of course, to a personal effect in the game. Dragon Age, from the very get go, from the start, I mean, you had the Warden, and the Warden story ends, and it shifts over to Hawk, and then Hawk now is completely irrelevant, we find out later. And now the Inquisitor, who has this incredible power, but still, I mean, the story will end, there might be DLC, and there will be new tales that are told. And of course, that was always the intention, based on statements made by the Dragon Age writers, that is to create a world where different tales are told in different parts of the world. But there is something that you lose when you do that. You gain a lot. You learn a lot about the lore, the history. You get to know different kinds of characters. But I would argue you only get to know them on a superficial basis. And a lot of the people that were, say, clamoring for more intimate or at least closer relations to characters such as Liliana or Morrigan, I think this stems from a deep desire that most players have who are involved in the franchise, and indeed from basic human desire to want to become connected and attached to certain characters, and to really form that connection and continue it and maintain it throughout. This is not really possible in Dragon Age, but to a large degree, despite the many flaws, it was possible in Mass Effect. Be it Tali, Garrus and Tali are very good examples of this. Liara as well, to a certain extent, with Lair of the Shadow Broker. And you have this continuity of character interaction that really, I think, ultimately made the strength of the Mass Effect series, created that strength. Whereas you look at Dragon Age, and this isn't so much a criticism per se, as Dragon Age sucks. No, it's a different setting, it's a different background. It's high fantasy for the most part, but it also creates a different kind of residual feeling in the player. And what I mean by this specifically is that playing Dragon Age, and playing it now a lot, I currently have 4 different characters that I'm running. Both Gunhild and Corvina are kind of on hold because of the Let's Play, but I have a male dwarf rogue and a female dwarf rogue. I have 3 dwarves. Big surprise. I like dwarves the most. And playing it and interacting with the characters in the world, Dragon Age, when I think about it, when I try to find an accurate description of what it is as a game, as a series rather, it plays like a historiographer's account of, well, a history book basically. You're sort of, it's a historiographer's novel. The characters have significance, but their significance is fading, and you move on to the one from one chapter to the next. And because it's all embroiled in this sort of massive historical hodgepodge of different events, it's hard to find attachment and connection to individual characters. And when you do try to do that, a la Morrigan or Liliana or some of the characters of the past, you tend to get burnt quite severely, I would argue. And by burnt, of course, I mean you kind of feel a loss. You no longer have the same interaction with the character. They're looking at the character from a different perspective, or in some cases, they're just completely gone. Some of you know what happens to Hawk in the game. Either he dies or he disappears, and so it plays like you are a participant in a historiographer's work, right? Mass Effect, despite the many flaws, and I have to keep on having to say that, felt more like a novel. Yes, there's lore. There, a personalized novel. There's lore. There are historical events, and that helped create the galaxy as we've come to know it, the Mass Effect universe, rather. But because of the continuity, because it was a trilogy, because you had the Shepherd, because you had the crew, it gave you a different feeling, and I think ultimately that's what created that strength of of character in the game, why people became so attached to it, despite the many mistakes and flaws. I mean, despite Mass Effect 3, horrible. And perhaps because of that, perhaps because of our connection to the characters, because it was so personalized on a level that you would never get in a Dragon Age game, that's why we became so upset. Uh, Notice Dragon Age 2, which was pretty bad overall. At the moment, I would rate Dragon Age Inquisition 8 out of 10, and I'll go into reasons for that at a later date. So keep yourself braced for that. Dragon Age 2, yeah, had a lot of technical flaws. The story was flawed, but it didn't have that sort of feeling of utter devastation that Mass Effect 3's ending, as well as the general, well, Mass Effect 3 in total had. It just sort of brought the series to a close in a horrific way, and it will never be forgotten. And I think it was because we were so attached to some of the characters, the Garrus Vicarians, the Liaras, the Tallies, the Shepherds, even Edie. They were your crewmates. The Inquisition, when I play through this, feels like hired help. It all feels sort of, yeah, this is the Inquisition. It's great. What else can we do with it? We got this hired hand, this hired hand. You have these individual romances, I suppose, but you don't have this long-standing attachment. And of course, that's done by intention, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think Dragon Age is meant to be played from the perspective of a historiographer, and Mass Effect, at least to date, has been meant to be played from the perspective of a novelist writing a novel. Never mind the bad writing occasionally, or very often in some cases. But this leads us to a dilemma, particularly within the Mass Effect universe. We don't know what's coming with the next Mass Effect. I don't know. I could be dead by then, but let's just speculate. It seems unlikely that it would be a new trilogy, although it could be. But if Mass Effect were to veer away from its novelesque storytelling, its novelesque mode of telling a tale, and move more into this is the universe, this is the galaxy, we're going to tell you some snippet, a historiographer's account of this is what happened, and then move on, I think it might actually be losing one of its greatest strengths as a franchise. That is to say, yes, despite the horrific ending in Mass Effect 3 in general, we developed a level of attachment and connection to the characters that was deeply felt by many, and I think, once again, hence the outrage of the fans and why I was upset and everyone was so upset. I don't have, and I don't think I'll ever have, that level of attachment to characters in Inquisition. As I said, I'm playing it, and I feel like this. I'm looking at history passing, unfolding before me. I'm looking at the events, and the banter is nice, and the character interaction is well written for the most part. And so I love some of the characters. Dorian's great. I like all the characters, actually. They're all interesting in their own unique way. But it doesn't. These are just pieces on a chessboard. They're just part of the bigger historical background, right? Mass Effect never really played like that. And I personally would think it'd be a shame if they actually went in that direction, because that is a fine distinction, and one that really was the primary strength, in this humble gamer's opinion, of the Mass Effect universe. And it's why we became attached to Shepard and Garrus and the whole lot, because they actually meant something over a long period of time. They were just part and parcel of that universe that we'd come to know. Uh, and Dragon Age, of course, is very different. It's a historical account. You're literally playing history, moving from one part of history to another. You know, we play the Warden, move ahead to 10 years, then a little later, and who knows what's going to happen in the next Dragon Age? I guess it'll be into winter, maybe, or who knows? We don't know. It's just impossible to tell. But still, it's a different kind of enjoyment. But I think human beings have a deep urge to connect to characters, to form those kinds of quote unquote lasting bonds. And, you know, because Dragon Age doesn't really deliver on that level, it would be a shame if Mass Effect went down that route, even though it could be an interesting concept as well. The historiographer's account of Mass Effect, if you will. Anyway, I'll stop talking now, but given my data cap issues and I don't know when they'll be resolved, you can either look forward to or not look forward to more basically discussions over stills. So thanks for watching. Your input and comments are always appreciated, and everyone take care. Bye bye.